I still think it's a category that is wide open within all of motorsports, and that is health and wellness. When was the last time you even heard about a driver's name being included in a greatest athlete discussion? Today we're going to talk about really quickly about how many guys and girls in motorsports can get one of these things.
From the West Branch Studios in Davidson, North Carolina, welcome to Dump the Clutch with your host, Brad Zimmerman.
All right, this is a hot button for me, so I'm going to try and pack everything in here into under 10 minutes. Are drivers athletes? The quick answer is yes. This is a discussion that for the last several years, 10, 15 years, has always been brought up. And a lot of people that don't understand or don't watch motorsports, when they hear this question, they always gut reaction say, no, drivers are not athletes. They're sitting in a car, they're turning the wheel. Anyone can do that. That's the 100,000 foot argument that usually pops up. So what I want to do is break down why I think they are absolutely athletes. And then also I'm going to tag some people here in the post, because I think a lot of people are sleeping on this opportunity that can be had in a very open space within that category within motorsports. You got to look at baselines. About 0.5% of the US population has actually competed in a marathon and finished a marathon. I am one of those, although it was a miserable attempt and I barely finished, crawling on my hands and knees almost. An average heart rate for a marathon runner, so that's going to be between 4 and 5 hours, depending on how fast or slow the person is for average people, is going to be right in the 155 to 160 beats per minute. So again, not a lot of people have run a marathon. Anything over 150 beats per minute, that's when your body's actually really working and things are happening within your body. 2017, Jamie McMurray wore a heart monitor on his body during the Loudon race, which is a 1 mile track. It's fairly flat. You pull some good G's in the turns. He pulled the information off of his watch and his monitor, and he posted it online on Twitter a while ago. His heart rate average was 144 beats per minute. The race duration was 3 hours and 23 minutes, and his heart rate peaked at 171 beats per minute. So right off the bat, I think that provides a really good baseline that even though physically, when you look at these guys behind the wheel, they aren't doing traditional sports, but their body is actually working the same, if not more, than what a traditional athlete is going to go through. Another thing to look at that motorsports drivers almost across the board have to deal with on a regular basis when it comes to racing behind the wheel is heat management. The driver's ability to absorb the heat and manage the heat during a race is going to come mostly on the NASCAR side. Because these cars are still, as of the balance of this year, are completely built out of steel. The exhaust pipes run directly underneath the driver's knees, and then they dump out the side. And there's very little space between the top of the header pipe and the floor of the car. So almost instantly, that car is heating up the interior of the cockpit where the driver sits. There are zero creature comforts in there to try and create a barrier of that heat from getting into the car, and it presents a problem right off the bat for the driver. Usually, wherever you are, no matter what time of year it is, the interior temperature, ambient temperature of the car is at least 105, 10, 15 degrees on the low end. And when you get into the hot summer months, and I believe one time the temperature gauge broke, as it peaked at 150. It went over 150, but it broke that, so 150 degrees. And these races are not 30 minutes or 40 minutes. They're 2.5 to 3.5 hours easy. The other thing that really gets missed is the mixture of driver comfort and aerodynamics. So one thing I learned is that there is not a lot of moving air inside of a cup car, and that is done completely on purpose. What the aerodynamic team at any given race shop is focused on is keeping the air inside of the cockpit as still as possible. If air gets introduced from the outside into the cockpit, all that means is that car is going to be creating drag and it's going to slow itself down. So through rolling certain edges, leading edges as the air goes around the car, the designers are purposely taking that air and shooting it down the side of the car and away from the car and not inside of the car. So what that does is, as that hot air from the exhaust pipes is just about boiling the floor, it heats up all of the air inside of that greenhouse, and that air sits there and does not move. I have never driven in a race car, but I think the best example I've heard of when you're driving, especially at a super speedway, it's like you're driving on the highway, but it's in fast forward. Everything is happening so quickly, your decision making and your cognitive skills need to be sharp and on point every single lap. Not every lap, almost every corner, because any miscalculation, whether it's a quick brake, accelerating, letting off the gas, finding the draft, positioning yourself to go around another car that may be slower than you that's going to cause an accident. Those are things that you need to be thinking of every single lap. And when you add on the heat stress, when you add on the heart rate, when you add on the fact that they're blowing through water weight, sometimes up to 10, 12 pounds they'll lose per race. All of that physical stress being put on the driver's body is working against what's happening in their brain, and that creates a high level of stress, and that really puts a premium on good decision making when driving. Physical strength, obviously that's going to come into play. On the NASCAR side, mostly our circle tracks. Some cars do run power steering, so from a physical standpoint, yes, it does take certain muscles to be worked more than others. But for this quick conversation, we're going to talk about IndyCar racing. IndyCar drivers are going to put up with a ton of G-force. I think I brought this up before. Mid-Ohio is a track that I think they're going to touch almost 5 Gs going through a certain turn, to the point where they need to squeeze their legs to keep their blood in their head. So that is something, again, that doesn't get pointed out on television, and I think it's hard for people to understand that they're literally having to wrestle a car around a track that does not have power steering, and the downforce that's being put on the front of the car, since it does have an adjustable wing on the nose, and depending on where they are, they're putting a lot of wing into the car. It's the equivalent with some tracks of an elephant sitting on the front of the car, and there's no power steering to help the driver turn the wheel. There's not a lot of other traditional sports that can match up to the different types of stresses that these guys go through. Having the competitive juice, having the guts and the brains to outthink your fellow drivers during a race while you're taking on all this other outside stress is another vital trait that takes a good driver to a great driver. There's been a lot of things that have happened on the track. I'll put one up here of Alex Zanardi, I think in the early 90s. It's called The Pass, and it's still one of the best examples of gamesmanship I think that has ever been done in motorsports. But things like that, getting back to the cognitive side, and also, so now we're talking about the driver's soul, to make sure that not only are they going to put on a good show for the fans, but these guys and girls want to win. They want to win in everything, and getting to the front in a smart way that's going to put them ahead of everybody else is their end goal. And so from a sponsorship standpoint, if you have products or services that need to align with these really unique athletes, I think motorsports is a wide open landscape for you to get invested in. Controversy is always good. Good controversy is always good. So, asking the question, are drivers athletes? I think that is a very fair question to ask. It will always bring up a polarizing conversation, and to put your brand in there and then to actually have your brand make potentially the team or driver perform better, again, that's a huge win for any sponsor to have. Do me a favor, leave a comment below. Do you think drivers are athletes? I'd love to hear what you have to say, and thanks for watching, and have a good day.